Everybody, it's the Last Raider. We are back with another video, and the wokeness, the Borg just will not stop trying to assimilate fandoms. Let me tell you. Now they're going after a very, very classic character. One that if you grew up during the 90s, you would know this character. You would know this character very quickly, and that is the character of Zorro. Now, the character of Zorro is actually a nobleman who comes back to California and discovers a corrupt comandante, and the corrupt Spanish army is now, oppressing the people. And so Zorro goes in, and fights against him all the time, kind of screws him over. Anytime he gets a chance at screwing the comandante over, he screws him over good. So, as it turns out, let's just read the entire, let's just read this article from IGN. A new Zorro reboot starring a female protagonist is currently in production thanks to a new deal between CBS and Propagate, according to a report by Deadline. The female Zorro series will focus on not the original masked swordsman, but is actually set in the modern day. The series will follow Z, a descendant of the same lineage that produced the original Zorro, and her efforts to protect people in her community. Okay, so a couple problems I see here. One, why call the character Z? Zorro actually means fox. That was the whole kicker with Zorro's entire persona. He was a masked man in black who operated a bit like the Lone Ranger, but his persona, a lot of it was to be, he was a crafty fox. Always, that was the thing about Zorro. He was always smiling no matter how bad the situation got. And he did everything he could, get situations under control. Lots of fun stuff. The old Disney used to have an old series. I wish they would just frickin' bring back the old black and white series from the Disney Vault and just put it back on TV, because that series was amazing, okay? That was an amazing series. But if you have someone who's a modern day descendant of it, there are ways this could actually work if done properly. The problem is we're not going to get it done properly. The proper way to do this is to have Z fight like the cartel and drug dealers and actual criminals, and actually, try to actually fix her community and actually save it. More than likely, she's going to be beating the crap out of a bunch of white ICE members. We already know where this is going. She's going to beat the crap out of a bunch of ICE members. She's going to probably wield a sword. Zorro's thing was he wielded a sword and a whip. Like I said, if you had a character like this fighting the cartel, it would be a really good series. But the problem is the criminals we're going to be fighting are going to be race-based. And if you have a Latina fighting, which is going to be a Latina, fighting a bunch of Mexican cartel members, it's going to be, they're going to say something stupid like racism or some nonsense. They're not going to put it where it needs to go. Let's see if I can get up here to where a female Zorro reboot is being written and executively... Frick. My God, IGN, where's your editor? The female Zorro reboot is being written and executive produced by Alfredo Barros Jr., who previously produced Magnum P.I. and Burn Notice, among other series. And honestly, if they would leave this guy alone and let him do his thing, it would be a good series, I think. The problem that we've seen with woke series, if you go to Star Wars, if you go to the new Terminator movie, the rumors that are coming out about Terminator, there's micromanagement being done by some SJW and the higher-ups because they want it to go a certain direction. And CBS has already done stupid stuff already. I just don't trust anything new coming out. But let's just keep going. The deal between CBS and Propagate is what's known as a first look production deal, meaning that CBS has the right to first look at a new property before investing in purchasing it, usually in exchange for a development fee. So they're paying to have this developed, but they're not totally invested in it. It's just a small amount of money, probably to get like the first couple of episodes going, similar to what was happening with Batwoman. How that thing happened, I have no idea. I think the CW were already heavily invested in Batwoman by the time that happened. But I mean, I kind of like this little notion here that CBS isn't going to take it unless it actually proves it can make money. If it proves it can make money, and this guy is allowed to experiment, which I mean, Magnum PI and Burn. I don't know much about Magnum PI, but I've seen Burn Notice. And that was an awesome series. I loved Burn Notice. The people that they picked for that show they were spot on. Bruce Campbell, love anything Bruce Campbell's in. I love it. Jack of all trades. That's what I remember right there. Other details are very scarce, but this Zorro reboot won't be the only property capitalizing on a female-oriented point of view. Wonderful. An all-female spin-off of the Into the Spider-Verse franchise is already in the works, possibly being directed by Giacomo dos Santos, who's known for his work on Justice League Unlimited and both The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra series. Okay. If they hadn't have said The Legend of Korra series, I would be on board with the whole Spider-Verse thing too. But again, we're doing this thing where we want to do an all-female group, which is what everyone's doing. Why can't we just do a truly diverse group? That's one of the things I liked about Into the Spider-Verse. I didn't mind the idea of other Spider-Man characters coming out. I really would love to see not something totally like Venom, but probably a female superhero with like a Venom type symbiote in it. Well, maybe not Venom type, some other type of symbiote. But I think that would be a pretty cool series to run, especially if you could do it, if you wrote it properly. Like Stan Lee always said, write what you like and write it well. I think it could be done and done well if written properly. The problem is nobody knows how to frickin' write nowadays, it seems. But Legend of Korra kind of retconned a bunch of the last Airbenders lore and kind of destroyed a lot of it in the process. And the character was unredeemable as hell. I did not like. I stopped watching about halfway through the first season. And I was like, now, this is not as cool. Aang was a much better character than Korra was. Also, we got something down here about Captain Marvel and Brie Larson and everything. But one of the things that people are probably going to ask is, why go to the modern era with Zorro? I don't see the reasoning behind the female. I'm pretty sure putting the female protagonist in there is just to put the woman points in, so you get the woke points going. But I think probably putting it into the modern era. Last I checked, and I remembered this from watching one of Clint Stoker's live streams, he was talking about public domain characters, and I remember him saying that Zorro is actually a public domain character now. Meaning that the classic Zorro back in the old days where he was a Spanish nobleman in California and all that good stuff. That's public domain, I think. I think anybody could really pick up a story on that and write their own Zorro stories. There is no, you don't have to worry about paying anybody. That whatever you make off of it would be your money. I think this is probably just a concept that they've thrown out there to put, because like I said, it's kind of, how do I put this? It's kind of like how Star Trek has to do everything 20% different, which is why they're now putting touchscreens in an era where Star Trek didn't have touchscreens. Why the Enterprise looks so dang different, why the Klingons look different. Everything has to be around 20% different so it doesn't interfere with some other person's property. Now, the thing is, with Zorro, my guess is they're making these levels of changes not just because they want to push a woke agenda, but also because if they do it in the modern era, this is technically a brand new character that would be owned by one company. Zorro is still a pretty popular character. There are people that still know who he is. He hasn't had a movie in years. There hasn't been any development with the character done for a very long time, from what I understand. He's kind of gone through a dry spell. But Zorro is, like I said, Disney did an entire Zorro series at one time, and then the character has jumped. Paramount, I think, Paramount or Universal one did the Zorro series with Antonio Banderas, which was two movies. They were very good. Antonio Banderas, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Anthony Hopkins. I mean, you got a ridiculous amount of acting talent just right there in those three people. Especially considering Antonio Banderas had just done the movie Desperado. So, and Catherine Zeta-Jones had come from Entrapment and several others. Then you had Anthony Hopkins, who had done Silence of the Lambs at the time. They were like a trifecta. you had a really good, and Catherine Zeta-Jones getting her dress slashed by Antonio Banderas. That was awesome. And then they did a spoofy Zorro after it, which also did pretty decent. But reality, I think most of the modern era crap is probably just them trying to make a brand new character, or try to, fake a brand new character so that they can have full control of the rights over it. Because like I said, I think just about every company has done some sort of Zorro since the character has gone public domain. Disney did a black and white series back in the day. It was incredible. I think there have been multiple movies done of Zorro. There have been multiple comic books, I know that. I don't know if Marvel actually did a comic book on Zorro at one time. They might have. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But I know Dark Horse did one. I think IGN did one. It did a Zorro spin-off series at one point. So like I said, the original Zorro is actually a public domain character, and so I mean it's very hard. You wouldn't have very much control over the original character. But now this one, if CBS buys it, they will have a lot more control over the female Zorro in the modern era. The problem is, I don't think it's going to go very far because, one, you can't really, you're going to have a lot, because like I said, nowadays, it's been almost 20 years since anything major has been done with Zorro that I can remember. And that was about when the last movie came out. So you're got a character you're going to have to really explain some stuff to, which could be done through each episode, explaining Zorro and what he did back in the old days. But the problem is, with most companies' track records on dealing with male heroes that have already been established, they have a tendency to just completely retcon them entirely, or trash them, or bash them, or, God forbid, commits ball-busting bullcrap. So the problem is, if they do this improperly, the character of Zorro will look like a wimp back in the day, and then it will underwhelm audiences, at least new audiences, who've never been exposed to Zorro. Like I said, Zorro was a badass character. He, at one point in time, took on a giant Native American who shot arrows tipped with dynamite. And that dude nearly killed him. I mean, he had Zorro literally tied up inside the belly of a whale carcass to just, leave him in there to die. And Zorro was pretty messed up. I remember that from the Dark Horse comics. But, I mean, Zorro finds a way out of it. But, like I said, we've apparently got a new female Zorro coming. They just can't help it. They're not going to be... I don't think these people will be satisfied until they've estrogened every single aspect of Western culture. I've said it once. It's probably going to come down to fans, because I think Hollywood's just dead. I think it's bloated and overblown to such a point that it's impossible to recover Hollywood at this point. I think, just like the comic book industry right now, the big sellers in the comic book industry are indie comics. I think you're probably going to have to see like a MovieGate come around, or a CinemaGate. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to do the same thing Comicsgate did, which is begin making your own movies, finding your own actors, and running on cheaper budgets, and produce movies that are good for once, and begin to outperform Hollywood. And actually, this would be an interesting this would be an interesting way to do it, because if the Zorro show doesn't do very good, you could turn around and do your own Zorro show on YouTube. Because as I said before, this is a public domain character. It's in the public domain. Anybody can pick up Zorro and make any kind of story they want out of Zorro. So, would not be that hard, honestly. Would not be that hard. But anyway, tell me what you think about this. Be sure to like the video and also leave a comment. I like the comments because y'all leave them and I like talking with you. But also, liking and commenting actually beefs this video up. So don't forget to like and comment. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, because I'm putting out more of this content, as much as this content as I can put out. And hit the bell for notification, because YouTube, they're not going to notify you if you don't hit that bell for notification. I don't know why we got to have a bell for notification when YouTube's supposed to do it automatically, but YouTube's decided to do this nonsense. Anyway, I'm the Last Raider. Keep your head on a swivel. Stay frosty. I'll see you guys next time.